unknown did courageously steer. Through oceans to deserts for freedom they came, and dying bequeathed us their freedom and fame. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready, steady, friends, steady, not as slaves, but as...
Well, everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Doug Ulwick. I'm president of the Historical Society of Old Abington, a position I think I've held for about 14 years right now. Someone once told me early on, it's yours till you die, so, which is not technically true, but maybe they said it's yours as long as you want it. So I don't know, whatever, but I'm still here. I was actually one of the founding members of the Historic Commission back in the 1970s when I was still in college, and had the honor of serving with people like Doc Whiting and Martha Campbell and Louise Chandler. And they've all passed on because they weren't young at the time, and I was, and I'm the last man standing, but that's okay. We have other people too who know a lot, which helps a lot. Anyway, let's start out as we normally start out with a salute to the flag. So those who are able, please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. So we're on cable, we'll be on YouTube, so I always kind of need to make a general introduction for those who don't know what's going on or are tuning in from home or tuning in from wherever in the world for the first time. We are the Historical Society of Old Abington. We do 6 conversations a year. We do 3 in the fall, typically October, November, December, and then 3 in the spring. And we invite people in to talk about topics of general historic local interest. We are housed here in the Dyer Memorial Library building, and which has a relatively new director. Steve O'Neill is sitting right back there near the camera, and he's doing wonderful things here, and we're collaborating a lot, and he's welcoming in all of the public and making everyone feel at home here, which is wonderful, and it's great to see the Dyer becoming such an active part of the community again. So we're very grateful for his efforts and the efforts of the trustees. Again, HSOA, we have a $20 annual membership, a $100 membership for a lifetime. We run a contest every year. We stopped running it for a little while, an essay contest. And it's being handled by Marilyn Weber, who's over here, and Eileen Walls there. Deb Damon is not here right now, but they have helped us bring it back to life. And they've also made it much more versatile. Essays, memoirs, artworks, videos. They'll take a lot of different things as long as they're related to local history. One I like to point out a couple times is we've had Dot Taylor from Rockland submit memories to us, and she went to the Market Street School in Rockland. Okay, who knows where that is or was? Well, Market Street, okay, I see about 3 hands. It's torn down. There's a house there now. But she started there in the 1930s, outhouses out in the backyard. I mean, stuff we can't relate to now. Most of us can't relate to nowadays. And she has put that on paper for us with remarkable clarity, and it won her a prize. And then she did one about the neighborhood in Rockland where she grew up. And I put so much attention on it because any one of you could do a memoir like hers, and it adds to our historic knowledge of the old town. Growing up in the old town, active in the old town, I realized that the high school that I went to here in Abington was torn down. And at the time, it was one of the newest school buildings we had, but it was torn down to make room for a newer school. I have memories of that building that people going to high school today wouldn't have a clue. I mean, we had a language lab with reel-to-reel tapes. What's a reel-to-reel tape? So a lot of you can do this, and I urge you to do it. We are always looking for new entrants. We kind of just say the end of the year, okay, we're done for that year. We'll evaluate what we got and give awards accordingly. So I encourage you to do that. We've been getting away from doing postcard mailings. Several of you are used to getting postcards from us. not that much action from them. We send a lot of postcards to people who we don't see. So we're going to email for the most part. And I have on the entrance desk over there a sign-up sheet for email. You don't even have to be a member. If you want to get our emails, sign up and we will send you our emails. If you still want to get postcards from us, there's also an opt-in page up there, and we'll still send them. Anyone who wants them, we will send them. I had someone hit me up and say, I don't even own a computer. Please send me postcards. We will. So anyway, so that's important too. So that's how we stay in touch with you. We have our 3 programs lined up for the fall, and today we're talking about the Abington Fire Department history with Kevin Donovan. I'll introduce him in a minute. Next month, Van Heffernan from Rockland is going to talk to us about baseball in the Old Town. There were several leagues, there were several different places they played, and I knew nothing about it, so he's going to tell us about it, and that's kind of interesting. And then for December, we normally try to do a church. I think we're doing December 14th this year, and we're doing the Episcopal Church in Whitman. We're ending Whitman's centennial year with a church. We did the same last year with Rockland, and interestingly enough, we did their Episcopal church. So we'll actually go to the church for that and have a chance to walk around and see it. I'm told it's handicapped accessible. I'm thinking it must be around back. We'll find out. So those are our 3 for this year, and we hope you can join us for all of them in person. If not, you'll find us on local cable, and you'll find us on Facebook. So that's cool. I forgot to turn on the projector, so let me do that now. But meanwhile, we have Kevin Donovan joining us today. He wrote a very detailed history of the Abington Fire Department. It was originally submitted along with the essay series, and the committee looked at it and said, it's a lot more than an essay. This really deserves its own program, and I was quick to say yes, it does. So he's compiled it for us. It's a rather lengthy history, and I was nervous about, oh goodness, how are we doing this? But Kevin's a really good storyteller, and I think can take us through the history in a very interesting fashion. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we will use as our guide, and it's his show. I'm just going to interject every now and then. I think it's the button all the way to the side, the other side. That one, the green one. Power button there. Okay, there you go. And there's a light switch back there, a double on the technical help. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Anyway, it's coming up on screen. It'll be there in a minute, I promise. Can we also shut off the hall light here? That's gonna, the one nearest the door. There we go. Thank you. It's coming, it really is. So anyway, this is also our first time in this building using this screen, and we used it earlier in the year at Whitman Town Hall when we were doing a story about the creation of the town of Whitman. So we're happy to use it here at the Dyer's wide format and everything else. So okay, without further ado, Kevin, what else should we know about you? You're on the Board of Selectmen.
I am.
You have chaired it. You have been town manager in a few places. This is just off the top of my head. Any other credentials? Oh, also, tell us why the interest in the fire department. I think that's key.
Yeah, well, essentially, as Doug, well, thank you for having me here today. And as Doug mentioned, I originally, after I retired, wanted to do a history of the fire department. I served as a call firefighter. My uncle was the deputy chief. My grandfather was a captain on the fire department. On my father's side, on my mother's side, in Hanson, it goes back, her father, my grandfather, was one of the first people to be on a committee to buy Hanson's first motorized fire engine. And her brother, my uncle, served on the Hanson Fire Department as well. So I've always had an interest in the fire department.
I think it's in your blood.
So I wanted to bring together sort of its history. As a hobby, I like history, so I wrote a book, and it was the history of the fire department, beginning in 1883 to, at the time, 2025. I'm in the process of updating that because we're building a new headquarters station on Central Street in Abington, and I want to take it through to that point. I've added Some fires I didn't include that Abington went to in Rockland, Brockton, and then if we have time today, I want to talk about the Coconut Grove fire that has Abington connections as well. So obviously I can't pick out every fire that I've covered because we'd be here for a month's time. So I picked out, a few of them, pardon me, that I want to kind of run you through and take you from the beginning of time up until the present day. So currently, the town of Abington, as we all know, was incorporated in 1712, the current towns of Abington, Rockland, and Whitman. Cyrus Nash, in his diaries, had mentioned the first fire in town had predated the incorporation of the town, was roughly, I think it was in 1709, was Nash's sawmill, which is at the dam at Island Grove Pond. And since that point in time, the town has had different fires where, as you can imagine, primarily they were caused by chimneys. With the houses, the chimneys would get going, the fire would seep out, through the mortar or the whatever mud they used in those days and burn them down. It wasn't until actually in 1868 the town had considered the question of establishing a fire department, and town meeting voted unanimously not to provide tax money for the operation of a fire department. They did, however, want to build 4 hook and ladder houses, one in each section of the town, one in North Abington, East Abington, South Abington, and West Abington, and Center Abington. And those hook and ladder houses were pretty much, and they appointed 7 fire wards. Now, fire wards date back to actually ancient Rome and then in Europe into London, where they would appoint people to actually go through the streets at night looking for fire. And if there was a fire, they would, yell and scream, get out of the house. They also had additional duties to inspect chimneys, but primarily they were not suppression. So a fire ward was not for suppression of fires. So in Abington, they built 4 houses. The town appropriated $3,000 to build 4 hook and ladder houses. One of which I have up on the screen here was down by my house at Adams Street, where Quayle Funeral Home is, you see in the peninsula there. And a hook and ladder, it was really kind of, in my opinion, a false sense of security. They would use them to tear down a building if there was a fire so the fire wouldn't spread. That sounds noble, but I don't know how practical it was because the construction in those days was pretty solid. My guess is the North Abington Hook and Ladder House was built at the suggestion of Joseph Cleverly, whose house my wife and I live in at 78 Adams Street. He was a deacon in the Congregational Church up here. He was a selectman, state representative, a very influential and wealthy shoe manufacturer. So he had a lot of sway within the town, and he, I'm sure, had it built near his house. From that standpoint...
For those who are having difficulty location-wise, what's labeled high school here, most of us know as the North School. And what's labeled cemetery here, that's pretty much Quayle's, isn't it?
Correct. Quayle's parking lot.
Yeah. So that's, if you're trying to get your bearings on this.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
So,
that works. Thank you.
So anyway, it took about 15 years before the town, after 1868, for the town to actually vote to establish a fire department. On March 5th, 1883, the town adopted the statute, a Massachusetts statute that allowed them to organize a fire department. And in April of that year, after that, a month later, the selectmen appointed 7 fire engineers. Now, fire engineers are a committee that runs the fire department. Once the engineers are appointed, they organize amongst themselves, and they elect a chief engineer, who was the fire chief, the chief fire engineer. The first chief fire engineer was Augustus Wright, who lived right down here on Walnut Street at 80 Walnut Street. And he, at the time, he organized the fire department. I can't say enough about him, and not too many people know much about him. Mm-hmm. He organized the fire department. He was the integral part of organizing the Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks. He served as the superintendent of the waterworks. He developed and implemented the fire alarm system the hydrant system. He oversaw the construction of the 2 firehouses, Dunbar Street right down the street here, and Brighton Street in North Abington Center. And it was through his efforts that the fire department was inaugurated. And if you could go to the next slide,
Sure.
and this will show you, this is the Brighton Street station down North Abington. You have to the, if you're looking at the building to the right, down in the corner, and the man in the white, that's Augustus Wright. And these are the days when they had the horses. They had the department was organized into 67 men, an engine, hose cart, if you will, and a ladder in each house. Now, you got to remember, back in those days, there was a great rivalry between Center Abington and North Abington. And whenever North Abington had, Center Abington had to have, and vice versa. And you'll see that as I go along in the discussion. So each company, each house had an engine and a ladder. In North Abington, the town would not pay for would not buy horses. They had to rent them. And they rented them from the Culver livery stable, which was the cellar. Now, you'd know it as the Cellar Tavern. They had the livery stable next door. And then in Center Abington, it was the W.S. O'Brien Shoe Factory, he had his house at what is now the Bank of America, and the Center Abington Fire Station now was the W.S. O'Brien Shoe Factory. So the horses would run from Brockton Avenue all the way down to Dunbar Street, get hooked up and go to the fire. In some instances, if they didn't have horses at the livery stable in North Abington, they had to wait. As the house was burning, they had to wait.
For the horses.
And if they didn't have the horses, they would run down, somebody going by with the horse, they grab the horse, hook them to the
Steal it.
engine, and off they go.
Steal it.
So you can see the fire suppression was rather rudimentary in those days. If you could go to the slide.
Actually,
Yep.
brief moment first to the right-hand side of this image. We see a stone turret and some windows there. That's the Baptist church.
Correct.
So we're seeing it from Brighton Street, looking through and seeing the Baptist church. And I think the building to the left was the lockup, wasn't it?
It was eventually, that was the lockup.
Okay.
That's a different story, but
Okay.
again, the lockup police, very quickly, the Center Abington built the lockup on Lake Street.
Yep.
And because North Abington didn't have one, the people petitioned town meeting.
Gotta do
They
it.
appropriated money to build the lockup
Gotta do it.
on Brighton Street.
So this begins to play into the riot. So
Exactly.
we'll get there. And here we go.
So the first fire, this is actually Rockland, 1890 on Union Street. You'll see they called it the Brown Church, a congregational church on the corner of Church and Union Street. That church, it was a hot July day. They were trying to take the paint off the church, and as they would do, they were of course taking the paint off with
Torches.
Torches.
Of all
And
things.
as a result, the fire got going. That fire took out 14 buildings along Union Street and in back, including the Underwood block, which housed the town offices. Abington responded over there, Chief Wright. The Abington sent both, from North Abington, both companies out of there. Rockland had, and I'll give you a little story on the King Philip. Rockland used the King Philip that day, and it was probably the best piece they had because the standpipe water system, the standpipe wasn't completely full. It was only half full. The reason for the standpipe is when you fill it, the pressure brings the water down and disperses it. They had such a poor stream, and you can see it trying to put the fire out on the church.
See it up here.
That was only one stream that they had.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the pressure in the hoses. The fire took out, as I said, 14 buildings in Rockland Center, and the King Philip is there. Now, a quick story on the King Philip. At once upon a time, I was town administrator in Rockland. At the time, Chief Kevin Henderson had come to me, and the fire alarm superintendent, Bernie Ludwell, who was very good friends with Ralph Tedeschi, who Ralph had bought the King Philip, which was bought in 1869, before Abington, Rockland, and Whitman split up. And I, coming from Abington, always said that was actually the Abington piece.
Belongs
It
here.
belongs here. It was built by private subscription, so I never was able to get it back. But anyway, Bernie convinced Ralph to donate it back to the town of Rockland. I was there the day, Kevin, Chief Henderson, myself, when Ralph came in, brought the King Philip over and donated it back to the town. I had a heck of a time trying to get the insurance company to agree to insure it.
Oh, yeah.
But I threatened to pull all the town's insurance away from them. They magically decided
Blackmail.
it was a good idea, maybe, that
Blackmail.
they would do it. So anyway, the King Philip is back. It's in the process now of being refurbished down in Pennsylvania, Matt.
Yeah. What year did you get it back from Tedeschi?
Yeah.
Roughly.
Give him a decade.
95-ish, I think.
Okay.
I think it was 95.
Was this at National Fire Protection Headquarters in
Yes.
Braintree?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ralph had it. He would let it go to parades. He loaned it out. He was very generous with it.
Oh, yeah.
And he did it for sentimental reasons. Obviously, his father, Angelo, started their supermarket empire out of the front room of his house in Rockland
Yeah.
on Market Street. But it was a sentimental reason. He obviously had more money than any of us in this room had. And he decided he was getting along in life. And actually, I think he passed away not long after he donated it back to the town. So it's back to the town where it belongs. Rockland's in the process of refurbishing it, and it'll go to good use, I'm quite sure, from there. Where are we now?
Well, I'll jump in on a quick
Yep.
one. I understand that the fire bell for the town of Rockland was in the steeple of this church. So its last ringing was its own demise, which is kind of interesting. I also heard Brockton sent perhaps a steamer or something over
They did. Brockton
to fight
had-
it,
yeah,
but
Brockton
it was
has-
horse-drawn,
Yep.
and one of the horses died on the way over.
Yep.
So this was quite a fire, and a lot of stories that go along with it. So we're just kind of grazing the surface here, but yeah, it's a big
And
deal.
actually, just interesting, the Underwood block where the town offices were, the town offices ended up relocating. They ended up moving to the Gladstone block in, no, wait a minute. They moved to the Rockland Savings Bank block, which was up the street, which itself burned in 1934. They had to move out of the Savings Bank block to the Gladstone block, which burnt in 1941.
They didn't have any luck.
I can happily say when I was town administrator,
didn't burn.
we never burned down
It
town
didn't
hall.
burn.
So from that standpoint, Rockland Town Hall has been burnt out of 3 locations anyway that I know of. We could go to,
Next.
actually, the North Abington riot, it should be.
Oh, it is, by all means.
So I'm going to let Doug tell you briefly the lead up to the riot, and I'll morph into where the
I
fire
actually
department
just
came in.
shared that I had done a paper on the North Abington Depot when I was a student at Syracuse University back in the 80s, and I found it the other day. But anyway, the Old Colony Railroad line came through town. New York, New Haven, and Hartford had leased it. And about the same time, the trolley system was coming in that was connecting Abington, Rockland, and oh my God, you could go from Brockton to Nantasket on the system. But in order to establish it along North Ave and North Abington Center, they needed to cross the right-of-way and the tracks of the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. Fine. New York, New Haven, and Hartford was not very happy about that, to put it mildly, and they sent crews down on cars going back and forth to stop them. You can actually see in this picture, right at the utility pole in the foreground, where there was some excavation going on here, where the tracks were going to cross. Now, some of the history just simply said, well, they wouldn't let them cross. They actually had to install a piece called a frog. It's an X-shaped piece, so the trolley didn't have to bump up over the railroad tracks, it could pass through them. And the railroad is saying, yeah, you're not touching our stuff. You're not touching our stuff. They recognize sovereign rights and whatever. And it got nasty to the point that it erupted in a full-blown riot. And they had the goons from the railroad and fighting the locals. I mean, they literally read the riot act. And there were weapons, there were injuries, there were lawsuits, and the railroad lost. Big time. I mean, they had executives
Go to jail.
for it, and they had settlements with people who were injured in the fire. I mean, there were axes involved. They actually brought out a fire hose to help quell, and it didn't do much, and they actually took an axe to the fire hose. So it was a really nasty, nasty chapter in the history. In 1893 for this, and by 1894 the executives had been jailed. This picture was taken by Haskell. He had a studio in the building across the street where, okay, I'm going to call it the Playroom. What's it called now?
Lynch's.
Lynch's, thank you. And we figure he went across the street upstairs in the E.P. Reed Lumber Company and got the picture of the riot. And it's passed down to us to this day. There's several copies out there. This is a really good copy. And the building, kind of in the center is the Old Town Cafe. It's been there all these years. At the time, it was the post office. Before the post office got moved around a bit. But that building is one of the few in here that's still standing, I think, and has a long and storied history as a result. So the locals won. The trolley went through. The frog went in place. I didn't mention they even cut the wire that was giving power to the trolley. So that's kind of the highlight points. Did I leave anything big out?
No, that's
Okay.
about it.
Okay.
And
Yes.
Is that Arnold Park right there?
No,
No.
Arnold is way further off to the right.
Okay.
So we're right at the intersection of Railroad Street and North Ave. North Ave is running front to back, and Railroad Street's running side to side, just about where the crowd is. They're standing in Railroad Street.
so Augustus Wright, as I said, was chief fire engineer. He was also an elected road commissioner in the town. So he stepped forward and said to the railroad officials, I'm an official of the town. You have no right to tear up the roads in the town. I order you to disperse. They told him, get out of the way, little boy. We're going to do what we want to do. So he, as chief of the fire department, summoned Hose 2 to the defense of the town. They hooked up at the hydrant, which is actually in the New England Art parking lot down on Railroad Street. There's a hydrant across the street over here, but the crowd, by that point, there was over 1,000 people.
Couldn't get near it.
They couldn't get near that. So they used the hydrant down on New England Art side of the parking lot and ran the hose up to try and they just had hydrant pressure off of the hydrant for the water. It did disperse some of the crowd. They responded by throwing paving stones, axes. They started, the railroad workers started swinging axes about. It knocked Chief Wright in the head, knocked John Hollis, who would eventually become the police chief, in the head. Hollis got a settlement of over $2,300. Wright got a settlement of about $1,200.
A lot of money back then.
Yeah, and so in any event, that's the fire department involvement as far as the riot goes. If you,
Next.
yes, please.
Okay. There we go.
Now comes, let's go to Center Abington. Augustus Wright ended up stepping down as chief of the fire department in 1901 because he had, by that point, had been elected selectman. And he was chairman of the Board of Selectmen. And you got to remember, as I had said, he had built the fire department. He had overseen the construction of the 2 firehouses. He built the hydrant system. He built the water system. He built the fire alarm system. It was his baby. And he didn't want to see it, he wanted to see it progress. He was a very progressive thinker. Unfortunately, the engineers appointed Charles Jenkins as the chief engineer. Chief Jenkins was there for about 4 years, and in 1905, this was his undoing. The Keene Hotel, which sat at the corner of Walnut and Cherry Street, right around the corner. If you're on Walnut facing Cherry, to the left, there's a house there. That was the Keene Hotel. That had a fire in February 5th of 1905. They couldn't save the hotel. The fire extended to Mrs. Sewell's house next door. It burnt the roof off her house. It was a few days later, 6 days later, on February 11th, the W.S. O'Brien Shoe Factory at Rockland Street, where the Center Abington Fire Station is now, caught fire. W.S. O'Brien was a very influential shoe manufacturer He rented the horses, remember I said, to pull the fire apparatus. They couldn't save, they burnt off basically the top floor of the shoe factory. At that point, you can surmise, there's nothing in writing, but you can kind of read between the lines to see what was happening. Augustus Wright was chairman of the Board of Selectmen. He had been the fire chief. He decided, because he was terminally ill at that point in time, he would die in December of that year, and they put it right in the town report, of cirrhosis of the liver. He was only 58 years old. He opted not to run for selectman, but town meeting that in March unanimously voted to instruct that the selectmen reorganize the fire department. The townspeople had lost confidence in the fire department. So the selectmen took that and they replaced 5 of the 7 fire engineers, one of which was Jenkins, so he was no longer eligible to become chief engineer. At that point, they appointed, for a 1-year period, George Green as the 3rd chief. Now, remember I said North Abington, Center Abington rivalries? Mm-hmm. That's how they appointed the chiefs. Augustus Wright was chief from Center Abington. Charles Jenkins was from North Abington. Green was from North Abington to fill that out. He served for 1 year, and then B. Ernest Wilkes, who lived right over here, back to Center Abington at 20 Walnut Street. For your old timers, remember Alice Frame, the Enterprise correspondent? Mm-hmm. That was Alice's grandfather. Alice lived in his house. Alice had a fire in her house. Many years later, that Joe Nisby, chairman of the school committee, saw as he was going to a school committee meeting. Alice was already at the meeting. He pulled into the Center Abington station on Dunbar Street, and Alice's house was
sounded the alarm,
burning, quite frankly. So if you could go to the next to, there's the W.S. O'Brien Shoe Factory. As you can see, they're operating on the outside. They didn't go inside. It was the method of firefighting that did in Chief Jenkins. Mm. And there's what's left of the fire thing. So in any event, we move forward. B. Ernest Wilkes served as chief until 1914, when John L. Casey, Fire Chief John L. Casey from North Abington, was appointed. Now, let me go back and just give you one side story. In August of 1911, in North Abington Center, Abington still was all call. They hadn't yet appropriated money for a permanent firefighter. We had the Standish block, which was the what we would call the Bemis block.
Bemis Drug on the corner.
The library
right.
block was the Winthrop block.
Right.
Remember the big blocks in North Abington Center. The post office was in the Standish block, right. Or the Bemis block. Chief John Hollis was the police chief. He lived at 326 North Avenue, which is on the corner of Platt Street. 2 a.m., a woman, Maud Humble, who lived in the library block, of the Winthrop block, heard commotion at 2 a.m. There were people inside burglarizing the post office, and they had just blown the safe up. She called the chief. He ran from his house. He put 2 revolvers in his pocket, ran up, got to Brighton Street, and one of the guys, when they were coming out of the post office, saw him, and he fired a gun at him, at the chief. He ducked behind a telephone pole, and then he started to empty his Derringer revolver at him. And then all hell broke loose. The 3 men that were trying to burglarize the post office started firing at the chief. He's all by himself. He hid behind the telephone pole. They had the bullets struck the pole all around him, didn't strike him. He fired back, ended up hitting one of them. They limped off. He didn't catch them. They caught them finally. They did time in state prison, and one of the prisoners was so impressed with the bravery of the chief that he wrote a poem about him. And he sent it to them, saying how impressed he was, how brave he was to do that by himself. Of course, in North Abington Center, everybody heard it, but they stayed in their houses.
Yeah,
they didn't want to go out. He was on his own, but in any event. And that was prior to, in 1919, the town appropriated money to
So the prisoner was going for an early release, so he thought writing a poem
If I'm
would-
about the chief, would
yeah,
get him.
might get him out early, but probably
So
not.
finally, in 1914, John L. Casey lived at 14 Plymouth Street next to my grandparents' house. And his helmet is right here. He was elected, the Board of Engineers was elected the chief engineer. Abington voted in 1915 to purchase their first motorized piece of fire apparatus, which was the 1915 Pope Hartford. Because the fire stations had wooden floors, the codes or the law at that time said you could not put motorized vehicles on wooden floors, and you had the old wooden stove to heat the station. So the town voted to house the new fire engine at Riley's Garage, which is the old timers Rumford Lithograph, which is now Walsh's sheet metal, across from the laundromat on North Avenue, the brick building there. That was actually used the first time when Rockland had their, I think it was the Rockland Shoe Company fire in Union Square. That was the first fire that the Pope Hartford responded to and made it to the scene in less than 3 minutes, which everybody was marveled at. Chief John L. Casey, again, was a forerunner in training. He worked at Crossett Shoe, and his bench he worked up on the 3rd floor. He would, right by the fire escape, he left orders that if they got a fire, the engine was to pull up, he'd jump out from down the fire escape, hop on the engine, and go to the fire with them. After their half-day work on Saturday, he would take the train into Boston to watch the Boston firefighters at the Bristol Street headquarters, which is the old Pine Street Inn. When you go on in on the expressway, you see
With the tower?
the tower. That's the Bristol Street fire headquarters. And he would go in there to watch them train, so he would get ideas on how to train the Abington firefighters. It was in 1921 that the town ended up purchasing the 1921 Seagrave fire engine. And here becomes the problem for Casey. Casey was going by the law. Center Abington wanted an engine at their station because North Abington now had one. They weren't going to have two in North Abington. Casey said, I can't do it. The law doesn't allow me. It's a motorized piece of apparatus. The engineers said, okay, Casey, guess what we're going to do to you? We're going to demote you. So they demoted him in 1922 to the 6th assistant chief engineer because he wouldn't go along with what they wanted to do. They appointed for 1 year, I'll get it in a minute. Anyway, they appointed a chief for 1 year. Casey agreed that if they took out the wooden floors and put concrete floors down, they would put the engine back in to Center Abington. They did that. He was reinstated as the chief engineer, and he served until 1949. This is a picture of, on the left-hand side, of that's Carl Shaw. He was the first permanent firefighter. Sody Shaw was 1919. He worked round the clock, and he was only allowed 1 hour for dinner and 1 hour for lunch, and other than that, he worked 7 days a week. That's a picture of him at the Brighton Street station. That engine went to Edaville Railroad after it was decommissioned. It was then, after Edaville disbanded, it was sold off. Well, I didn't realize till I was doing my book, and a guy I used to, actually the fire chief in Brockton, Kenny Callaghan, and I worked at the State Firefighting Academy together. He says, you do realize the town of Abington only loaned that to Edaville.
Oh, God.
I said, no, I didn't know that. Edaville sold it. It ended up out in, I think it was Western Massachusetts. And anyway, long and short of it, it ended up in the United Kingdom. A year ago, it was restored. A year ago, my wife and I went to the United Kingdom. We, through the fire department, the owner, Mark Dudfield, made contact. I made arrangements. Mark picked us up at the train station, brought us out. There's a picture of me and Mark Dudfield in Stourton, United Kingdom, of the Abington engine that was restored, the 1921 Abington engine that's over there now. That engine responded to the Abington High School fire in 1934, to the Strand fire, theater fire in Brockton in 1941 that I'm going to get into. So it was a nice piece of history to be able to connect with it all these years later
Overseas.
overseas in England.
So can Abington claim it?
No.
There's a statute of
Possession is
limitations
9/10 of the
there
law,
somewhere.
and it's in England. So
Yeah,
it's a subject of the king.
That
now.
would be a tough one.
So if you could go.
Sure, by all means. And I'm also seeing on the black and white picture, we're seeing the back of the Standish block.
Yep.
Again, little other things that crop up.
So here is the
I-
Phoenix block in Rockland.
Rockland, yeah.
One of the many fires on Union Street. Here you have, to your left, Charlie, these are all Abington guys. Charlie Taylor, the middle is Ralph Brett. Ralph ended up getting elected selectman, and then Percy Whiting, Dr. Whiting's father. So Percy and Malcolm Whiting's grandfather. So there they are taking their picture, and it was a cold day. They're all covered in
Covered in
ice.
ice.
At the Rockland in 1929 at the Phoenix block in Rockland. Here is the Strand Theater. The Strand Theater happened March 10th, 1941. The Strand Theater was next to City Hall in Brockton. It's an empty lot now. At the time, they had just finished with the movies. Everybody had left. The janitor was getting ready to clean up about 12:30, and as he went downstairs into the basement, discovered that there was a fire. He ran outside, pulled the box. Brockton responded, and they had a fire at the Strand Theater. Because of the construction of the theater, the fire gained tremendous headway. It ended up, it became a general alarm fire. Abington responded with Chief Casey and the 1921 engine, as I indicated. As they were inside the building, in those days, Stanley Bowman, remember Stanley, who took photography for the Enterprise? Stanley was inside. These are Stanley's pictures. They were actually standing on the stage as the fire department was trying to direct the hose lines to the ceiling. It's just the way it was in those days. Chief Frank Dickinson, who is on your left, is there talking to Deputy Chief Larry Lynch. Larry ended up becoming chief. Dickinson's wife had just died 2 weeks prior to this fire. They've got the fire. All of a sudden, as they're inside, the walls start to buckle and the roof came down. It came down on everybody, all the firefighters that were there. The mayor happened to be standing there. They had just left. The whole thing collapsed. Brockton lost 13 firefighters, 1 captain, 1 lieutenant, and 11 firefighters in uncanny use of the number 1. In doing so, the middle picture you can see, that's firefighter Bill Kelleher from Engine Company 3. He was up on the upper parapet, up on the upper balcony. And as the roof started to come down, he grabbed hold of the beam. He's holding on for dear life there. Stanley got a picture of him hanging on. Chief Dickinson and Deputy Larry Lynch, the picture they took there was at the police department garage, which was next door, that was set up as the morgue. They ended up having to lay the firefighters out, some of whom they couldn't identify. They could only identify them on one of them with his name was in his boots, and another, he was so badly burned, it was by the process of elimination of the others. It was clearly a sad day for the city. It was as soon as everything collapsed, Abington was there and rushed right in to help Brockton to try and dig everybody out. So it was a horrendous thing. Even to this day, Brockton still holds a ceremony on March 10th of every year at City Hall. There's a monument in City Hall, and there's one on the outside. The last survivor was Fire Chief Sonny Burrell, who was chief for a long time, and I'll mention him as I go along here. He, the face of the firefighter on the memorial outside of City Hall is depicted after Burrell, as he died at 100 years of age just a short time ago. So if you could.
Kevin, did you get those Stanley's pictures from Stonehill?
They will actually, through the
Yeah,
Stonehill
'cause
side.
he-
He's got, his complete set is over
He
there,
donated, yeah.
all of his. This is in January 3rd, 1952, the Crosley Block down North Abington Center. Actually, my mother and father-in-law lived in that block, and my wife was born there. And when we moved to our house on Summer Street, I said, I want to move back to North Abington. She said, but I was born in Center Abington. I said, no, you were born in North Abington. So we're going back to North Abington. This was the North Abington block. It was the Crosley block. It was along North Avenue and wrapped around onto Railroad Street. It housed the Dobsons. They had the Atlantic Greeting Card, Bill Jenowitz.
It's a vacant lot now.
It's a vacant lot.
Right, it wraps
the fish
around the Old
market.
Town Cafe.
It was essentially the Rushwick, I think, had went to go light the gasoline heaters, and it blew back on them, and the place went up in fire. Abington responded. Jesse Davis then was the fire chief. John L. Casey had retired in 1949. Jess Davis was appointed chief and would die in 1952 suddenly of a heart attack, but he was chief at this fire. They destroyed the entire block. They had to go in and actually evacuate people. It was 9 o'clock in the morning on a cold January morning, and I think if you could, the next slide will show.
Sure. Briefly here, the image to the left would have been along North Ave.
Yep.
And the image to the right, you can actually make out the backside of Old Town Cafe. Again, it would have been initially the post office. And this block runs up to the old movie theater, which is masonry, and it's survived.
Yep. And this is the shot from Brighton Street now. And you can see, and that telephone pole with the box on it, that was BB box 43. I don't even know if it's still.
I like the light
box is
fixture.
still there.
I want that light fixture. Why don't we use
But that was
anymore?
that was the telephone pole that Chief Paulus
Stood behind.
as he's getting fired at.
We can still see that? No, we can't.
Yeah.
We could zoom in, we could see, yeah, okay.
I don't know, is the box even there on the?
No, we don't have the Honeywell system anymore.
It does, okay.
We don't care about
I'm
those
showing my
anymore, do we?
age now.
Box, what's a box? Ready?
Okay, yep. Okay, there's another site. Actually, on one of the pictures, you can, Rockland was there on the turntable of Rockland's ladder. Abington didn't have an aerial in those days, so they had the Rockland aerial that was up to the roof. On one pitch, you had Kenny Ramsdell, who later became chief. He was operating it. On the ground was Jimmy Fotopoulos, whose grandson, Mike Concanon, is an Abington firefighter. Jimmy rose up to become deputy chief in Rockland. And Billy Dean was one, and I can't remember who was the other. But in any event, go ahead. This was January 18th, 1954. As I said, Jess Davis died of a heart attack in 52. Charles Whitman was appointed fire chief in 1952 to 1957. The McDonald kids, this was a little Quonset, we called it a Quonset hut. It was really a small cottage. You can see the hydrant there in front of the house. That's where Andy Winowich has his, across from, right on the Rockland Avenue line, there's the ice, the guy that has the ice and water across the street, and then Andy Winowich has his garage there. That hydrant is still there. That's sort of in the middle of it. The McDonald family had moved from Wisconsin. They weren't here that long, and they had 8 children. 4 of them were sleeping downstairs, 4 were upstairs. The kids, they had a kerosene heater that had since been outlawed. The kerosene heater flashed over. The kids downstairs didn't have a chance. They all burnt to death. Their ages were, they were 4, 8, 8, 6, 3, and 2. The boys, 10 and 7, and the girls, 4 and 6 weeks, survived. They were upstairs. The father ran up the back stairs to save those kids, passed them out the window, dropped them out the window to neighbors down below. The guy across the street, whose house the ice company is, or the water company, his son, 16-year-old son, found the fire. They called the fire department. It was a horrific time, clearly. The town banded together. They ended up building them a house on the corner of Summer Street and Melbourne Road, and that they stayed there for a while, and they, pardon me, ended up moving on. Ironically, his brother, McDonald's brother, lived at, and now Jimmy, you know where Jimmy Franny lived on Washington Street, 931 Washington, I think it is, 9. Anyway.
Back entrance to the school.
Yeah, right on the corner of going down to the junior high school, or the Beaver Brook School.
Showing your
His
age.
brother had a fire in his house that his daughter found, and they got everybody out. It was Chief Nuttall's grandparents, they lived next door, that called the fire department on that one. But in any event, the McDonald's, the town banded together, they built them a house, and as I say, and that type of thing takes a toll on everybody. You know, the first responders, the firefighters, police officers, they're human too. You know, and they feel it just like you would feel loss. So they had a tough time of it from that standpoint, if you could. This is the Strand Theatre fire in Rockland. This was, the Strand Theatre was, again, I'm going to date myself, it's not called this now, but where Bagnell Auto is and Flowers and Thing, there's an empty lot. It's in Union Square, there's an empty lot, and there's an apartment building in back. What's it called? It's an auto parts store now, and it's...
Yeah, it's Fisher Auto or whatever.
And,
else.
yeah, and there's, I don't even know what the heck's next door now. But in any event, that's where the Strand Theatre was. That particular night, it was September 24th, there was about 40 people in the theater. There was Mr. and Mrs. Don Robbins from Rockland, Mr. and Mrs. Russell Littlefield, and Mr. and Mrs. Philip Truffant from Abington. All of a sudden, sparks started coming down from above the screen. They were watching the movie A Day of Fury. Sparks started coming down. The people looked at each other and said, well, this isn't normal. And very quietly, they got up and went outside. Littlefield talked to the manager, and Phil Truffant ran across and pulled the box in Union Square for the fire. Clayson Inkley, who was the fire chief, was on vacation. You got to remember those days, no phones, no cell phones. So he was out of town. Bill Parker was the deputy chief. He arrived on the scene, went down to the front of the theater, and it was in the boiler room. The fire had already taken hold and started to go up, and by that point it was up in the eaves because of the construction. Up above that, the building was owned by the St. Alphonse Total Abstinence Society, and they had their hall up above that. So the fire, obviously, once it got into the hall, it just fed everything. Abington went over and operated there. Now, Bill Mullen was off duty. He was a permanent Rockland firefighter. He was off duty. He responded to the fire with his 16-year-old son, Billy. Bill got smoke inhalation. And in those days, you didn't wear masks. You just sucked it up and you went in the building. And inevitably, everybody would drop from smoke. Bill had got a dose of smoke, so he decided to go back to his car to lay down to recover. They went to go back to check on him, and something wasn't right. They called for a priest up to Holy Family. Father Connors came down, administered the last rites. Then Dr. James Donnelly, who was a doctor in Rockland, who was actually the grandfather of current Fire Chief Scott Duffy, Dr. Donnelly then pronounced what no firefighter or fire chief wants to hear, that he had died. Bill had left behind 3 children. Billy was 16, the daughter, I can't remember how old, and Mike, who ended up becoming a Rockland firefighter, was only months old at the time. They had the funeral from Sullivan Funeral Home. The day of the funeral, they went by, obviously, up to go to the Holy Family Church, went by the remnants of the Strand Theatre fire. Abington was covering Rockland, so Rockland firefighters could go to the funeral mass. Chief Whitman and a contingent of Abington firefighters were at the Rockland station. They saluted as the hearse went by. Abington Fire with retired Fire Chief John Casey, his son Lieutenant John Casey, who would months later become Abington Fire Chief, represented a delegation of Abington firefighters at his funeral mass. Rockland will be dedicating a park to Bill Mullen this coming Saturday on October 18th in Union Square he's the only Rockland firefighter to have been killed in the line of duty, and they're going to dedicate a park to his memory. Mike, his son Mike, was appointed to the fire department, retired a few years ago after serving almost 40 years, I believe. Billy was a call firefighter. He was a longtime foreman of the Rockland Highway Department. He has since passed away. But here we have the Ware Brothers Dairy Farm on October 20th of 1959. Two state troopers around midnight were going on shift. They happened to go by the dairy farm and saw that it was on fire. They woke up. Harold Ware lived in the house at 403 Linwood, and Ernie Laidlaw, Ernie lived across the street. Harold and Ernie went through the barn to release all the cows. They get all out but a few. He ended up, Ernie Olson, I'm sorry, Ernie Olson. I know I was wrong. Yeah, Ernie Olson, not Ernie Laidlaw. They loosened the stanchions. About 90 head of cattle and 3 calves perished. Whitman, Brockton responded. The barn was a total loss. And as you can imagine, that was a devastating to that. At that time, Linwood Street was very rural. There was the Philbrooks had the farm at the end of Rockland and Linwood, Ware's farm, and then down the street, Beale's farm, a Sunray Lee farm. So there was really, it was kind of isolated up there. It was all pasture land. So, and this is a picture of Chief Casey to the right and Kenny Bates, who was the deputy chief, at the fire scene. And that's the barn burning. Here we go, the Savings Bank block, November 26, 1960 was right next door.
Well, two doors.
2 doors down.
On the corner.
This, it was a Saturday night. Ernest Rossi from Rockland had just picked his wife up from Brockton. He was coming through Center Abington, and he said, "Jesus, there's smoke there. That looks kind of different." So he stopped at Erickson's News. Chuck Ford, and Chuck would have been here today. He's in Florida. Chuck Ford was the cashier that was on duty at Erickson's. He said, "No, that's not right. You better call the fire department." So they did. Abington responded, and it's the beginning of the story. The Savings Bank block had been sold, and it was not the first time there was a fire here. They had tried in a couple of days prior, in November 20th, a fire caused smoke damage underneath the stairway in the building. Prior to that, some people broke in and they tried to blow up the safe that was in the bank. At the time, there was a savings bank and the National Bank. I think at the time of the fire, it was just the National Bank that was there. And the upstairs, they was
Town offices.
The town offices were there, and above that, in the Franklin Hall, was the Wayside Furniture. He had stored the furniture up there, but Franklin Hall is where they had a lot of town meetings as well. So there was a woman, she was deaf, Mabel Johnson, had a sewing. She did sewing, and she was in the building at the time of the fire.
Working.
She did not know the building was on fire until she saw the firefighters climbing the fire escape. So they're able to get her, bring her out to safety, and eventually, as you can imagine, the building burned down and was torn down. The building, the fire was of such intensity, the house right next door, the windows and the roof almost caught fire. They were able to wet it down before that in this picture you see Chief Casey to the left. The middle one is Chief Clayson Inkley from Rockland, and to the right is Deputy Chief Kenny Bates. And then the below picture is the fire aftermath. Yep.
Was that a ladder truck on there?
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to show you.
Back here?
That's a crane.
That's a crane on that one.
Oh, yeah.
The ladder truck is in the next one.
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
There we
there's the Whitman ladder in the front of the building from two different angles. And that was quite the fire. I vaguely remember my parents taking me down there, I was only 3, seeing, I don't know why I remember this, but I do. And I don't think at 3 years old I can, but I do.
You can.
The water department was downstairs. I remember
Yep.
seeing a hose line going in, and that was probably a day or so later, anyway.
Mm.
And remember Lucille, who had the golden
The Golden
slipper?
Slipper was this, I think she was in 4 different locations,
Yeah.
but this was like the second.
And she moved eventually across the
So-
street over there.
Well, that was the last location, but she was
Yeah.
right next door.
Yeah.
here. She
Oh,
moved-
that's right, too.
Yeah,
She was,
she was right next door. That's the first I remember,
Was
but,
that the golden slipper?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
In 1964, the town appropriated $80,000 to
That's
build a new fire headquarters in
Spent
North
some real
Abington
money.
to replace the Brighton Street Station. And here it is in 1964.
Looks the same.
Yeah, it's still the same.
Kevin, that
Oh,
ladder
sorry.
truck that's there
Yeah,
was a result of the savings bank plot.
yes, 61, yeah.
Abington had that old 1929, I believe,
Yeah,
city service thing, and the town refused to replace it until the bank block.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, maybe
we need one now.
Maybe we should have had it. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, this is the First Parish Church in Brockton. The Brockton got a call for a smoke in a donut shop down on Montello Street. As they're going out the door, the ladder, remember ladders had Tillerman. They steered the back of the truck. The Tillerman on ladder 1 happened to look up at the First Parish Church and saw smoke coming from the stained glass window. He said, whoops, we better do something about this. They ended up, it was a very cold, very windy day. The fire took over the entire church. It ended up, the embers in wind can sometimes travel a mile. By this point, Edward Burrow was the fire chief. He stationed crews on roofs of buildings in Brockton because he was afraid of the embers. In this particular case, Hanson, they called for mutual aid for a number of towns, Abington being one, as well as Hanson. Hanson got the call. Chief Irving Foster authorized them to sound the siren because they didn't have whistles. They sound the siren. So the Hanson engine responded from South Hanson with a crew of men. There was a full complement. They were on the back step. As the engine was making its way up Route 27, at 27 and 18 in Whitman, it got in an accident with a huge oil truck. An oil truck, one of those massive trucks that delivers gasoline and oil. Everybody on the truck got thrown out. They all got taken to the hospital. One firefighter died immediately at the hospital, Eugene Levitt. The second, I believe, was the driver, Jim Craig, ended up dying a day later. The guys that were on the back step, one, actually 21-year-old Peter Huska ended up becoming, as time marched on, the Hanson fire chief, and Les Wyman, who owns Wyman's Nurseries down there. Hanson, at that point, and the reason I say that is I have mentioned my uncle at the time was the elected highway surveyor in Hanson and a member of the fire department, although he was not on the engine that day. Hanson's had 3 line-of-duty deaths for a small town. These 2, and then in 1980, they had one where Alton Grindle was training at the station that they have now, 75-foot ladder. He was up the top, he fell off, down to the bottom. He died a week later. So they've had 3 line-of-duty deaths for a small town. But in any event, that's a picture of the Hanson engine. It was totally destroyed, responding in the Whitman. Here's the Rook's coal shed.
Yeah, I remember this one.
I happened to be at the station that day. I was a young kid, hung around the fire station. I remember specifically because the Brockton Edison Company had donated an old line truck to the town for the fire alarm. So we were all scraping the paint off the truck. My uncle was captain, Leo Donovan was captain, and Herky Sampson was the driver. They got a call for a brush fire next to Ed Doherty, who lived at 117 Monroe Street, noticed kids playing around there and had started a small brush fire. So they called it in as a brush fire. The engine responded because it was just a brush fire. They got there, and when the fire got inside, now this was an old, 100-year-old at least, coal bin, where they would bring the railroad cars in full of coal, offload the coal, so the building had immersed all this coal dust. As soon as the fire got inside and hit the coal dust, it exploded. Johnny Casey, who was fire chief at the time, he always joked his car would never start. He had lived at 243 Plymouth. He happened to get there right away. He said his car, he got in there, his car started up right away and off. You know, he moved it out of the way. If you could go to the next slide. The engine did not make it. As it was an open cab, 1968 Ward La France. Herky tried to get back in the cab to move the engine,
out of the way.
and by now the heat was so great it melted the brake lines, it seized everything up. They had to abandon the truck. Both Herky and Leo, my uncle, ended up in the hospital with second-degree burns. A lot of guys got knocked out for burns and smoke inhalation that day. The fire was so intense, it caught the house, Yugolovich's house across the street, the attic and the roof on fire. You could see the smoke for miles around. There were a number of communities that came in, Rockland, Whitman, Hanover, Brockton, Weymouth.
Can I ask a question?
Yep,
So the slide before, they looked like there were tanks next to them?
Yeah.
What was in the tanks?
those were oil tanks.
Okay.
And they used that, you know, they would fill those tanks with oil and then fill the oil trucks to deliver to your home. Number 2 fuel heating oil.
And again, that was coming in by railroad, because they were right next to
Yeah.
the tracks, so, yeah.
Steve?
A bit of trivia, the right-hand picture was taken by my father, and that blue car was mine.
Oh, really?
I was babysitting my now 50-something-year-old nephew,
Ah,
and I was coming back from Brockton, and this took off, so I had a little radio in the car, so I responded and parked back there next to the railroad.
We're gonna need your autograph on that.
okay.
It is a Maverick.
Next,
Yeah.
here we go.
Okay, here's Cal's fire. Cal's in Harwood's Corner.
Thank you for saying it right.
18 and 139. It's no longer there. They had 2 fires there. One, on February 23rd, they had a kitchen fire upstairs. Art and Ellen Kalinowski, the owners, lived upstairs with their son David. They had a kitchen fire up there in February 23rd. They were closed down, they refurbished it, opened it back up in April. On Memorial Day weekend, May 28th, 1972, a fire was lit on the outside of the building. Pardon me, as I know her name as well as I know my own, but in any event, she reported to work and discovered that there was a fire. They called the fire department, came down. By now, the fire had taken over, came up on the outside of the building, up inside. It was an old building. And clearly, here in this picture, you see the Rockland crew. There's facing you is Kenny Ramsdell as the fire chief. I think there's Bobby Covey there and Dave Patry, and I can't see who the other one is. And then this is I believe that's the Whitman ladder on the other side. It messed up traffic, as you can well imagine.
Corner of Road 18 and 139, yes.
And that was it. The Kalinowskis threw in the towel after that.
That was the end of it.
Ironically, their daughter had married an Abington firefighter, Al Lyons. You know, so in any event,
That building was built as Harwood's store.
Yeah.
Growing up in this neighborhood, we call it Howard's Corner.
Yeah.
And it took many years for me to find it was Harwood's Corner. But we have wonderful old photographs of this taken from the intersection of, I think it was Cross Street back then, Wales. Anyway, looking back at this with the Congregational Church in the background, back in the day, it was a very beautiful building back in the day. And I knew none of that when I was growing up in this town and buying penny candy here.
Here's the Center Abington. The Center Abington station was opened in 1973 on the site of the W.S. O'Brien Shoe Factory. It replaced the Dunbar Street station that, if you had a good hand, you could throw a baseball and hit from here.
Well, if it still stood.
It was modern at the time. It had a mechanic. I don't think the mechanic's pit is still there. If you're looking at the station to the left-hand side, there used to be a mechanic's pit, so you could go down. I think they probably filled that in by now.
They're dangerous.
And in any event, they're still there, but they will soon to be in 2027 occupying new quarters.
Cool.
Yep.
And do we know what we're doing with the old building?
That one we may end up having to keep because we
Okay.
need it for the space.
See,
Yeah.
we built something new, and even then.
Here is
What are
the
we looking
fire in.
What's this one?
This is at the Center Abington Fire Station
okay.
when it caught fire.
Okay.
This was in.
Fire at the fire station. Novel concept.
This was on May 12, 1974. There was a string of fires, and this leads to, there was in 1974 and 1976. A Boston firefighter by the name of Downey, we had information he was residing in Abington at the time of all these fires. He ended up getting convicted of arson in Brockton, and I'll explain this 2 years later. We had a string of fires in 1974 that were repeated in 1976. It started out, this fire was at the Wayside Furniture, which is Pike's Warehouse, which is at Washington Terrace. They're trying to refurbish it into apartments now next to with, I'm morphing into townie speak now, so
It's allowed.
it's next to
Callahan's Law Office?
Callahan's, thank you, Roger. Callahan's Law Office. It's, anyway, that was, Ray Pike stored his furniture there. They had a fire around the back. They discovered that the back end was broken into, lighter fluid was found there, very small fire was put out. Later on, that was on May 12th. On May 18th, there was a fire at Reed's Lumber that did considerable damage. Then, that was at 11:19 p.m. There was a fire at the old Fiji restaurant, which is now Deanne's at 340 Center Avenue, on the outside that ended up going inside. There was a car fire across the street at Standard Oil. At 11:51, box 1415, which is the Center Abington station. Now, in those days, when the engine went out, you left the door open. Box 1415 comes in. The Whitman engine was at the North Abington station, responds, gets off to the Center Abington station and reports smoke showing. Now, if you're on the fire department and you get a report of smoke showing at your own fire station,
Pretty bad.
that gets your pulmonary system going. They did. Whoever went in there tossed the bunk room, lit the mattresses on fire, went outside and across the way to at the time, the mechanics building, mechanics bay, lit fire with rags there, lit fires in the apparatus floor. Anyway, it did considerable damage. In the right-hand corner, you can see the remnants of the old horse-drawn ladder truck that was in the back of the station there.
At the same time, the building's fireproof.
The building's fire. The building made it. It's still there.
Okay.
Now, in 1976, repeat. Reed's Lumber Yard again.
Too far ahead.
Wayside Furniture
Yeah.
again. Now, Wayside Furniture, by this point, I'm on the fire department. Wayside Furniture, we got there, it was fire inside. We are crawling around, because you can't see now, on the second floor. There was a huge hole in the floor that he would bring up the furniture through. Nobody knew that. You're crawling around, you're going to take an express trip right to the basement.
Not
Thank
good.
God we didn't, but
Yeah.
in any event. Right after that, we had just got back from that fire, and Brockton had the fire on Clifton Avenue, down the Montello end of town. Downey had Kenny Galligan, who was the chief, told me Downey went along the side of the Clifton Avenue factory with a propane torch
Oh, wow.
and got the fire going underneath all the shingles, so it overtook the sprinkler system. When Ray Mitchell, who was the lieutenant on Engine 3, got there, he ordered a general alarm, which is unheard of for a lieutenant to do, but the fire had consumed the entire factory. Abington went over, we went over, they had consumed. We got there, and we report to Chief Burrell, and where do you want us? And he said, pick one of those houses that are on fire. They had several houses that were also on fire from there. So anyway, Downey ended up, he was a former Boston firefighter, getting arrested, getting convicted in Superior Court of arson. We couldn't prove it, but we have reason to believe he was living in Abington at the time. The same fires in 1974 were repeated in 1976, which included Clifton Avenue. So from that standpoint. Here is the Standish block. This is the Bemis block, so-called. This happened at 9 o'clock in the morning, February 9th. I was working in the State House at the time. And the fire, Win Patton was the captain in charge. Malcolm Whiting was on the ladder. They responded, and my mother and father, where I grew up on North Avenue, 68 North Avenue, Win Patton reported smoke showing from that location, which is near Bates Street. And they started calling aid. I believe Jimmy Fotopoulos was on duty in Rockland. He didn't even wait for Abington to call. He told them, get on the engine, we're going to Abington. And he was halfway down North Avenue before the call came, before they ended up calling Rockland. It was because of the construction. Again, you had people that were currently residing in the building. There were two guys, Dave Murray and Kevin Wilson, that were working at Bud Little's garage, came running across to go upstairs because there were people still in the building. Frank Lyons, who was a park department worker, was at Martin's Bakery. He came out. They all went inside as the fire department was getting there. So the fire department got there. You had, of the 12 apartments, 11 of them were occupied with people already inside as the fire is ongoing, and 3 civilians. So they had to evacuate the residents, make sure the civilians get out. The 2 auto mechanics were able to get out on the fire escape and then come down. By that point, the entire building's going. Chief Casey gets there. They set up a deck gun, which is a big gun that they charge, can put a volume of water on it. But because it was a cold day, and there was ice forming on the road, the deck gun started to dance across the road, turned around, blew out the windows in the chief, that's not funny, but blew out the windows in the chief's car, and
That's kind of funny.
I'm
sorry, it is.
knocked down my wife's brother, who ended up in the hospital.
That's not funny.
A firefighter, and Chief Casey. They ended up, they called a number of communities, obviously, to come over. I was in the State House. I heard on the noon radio news of a fire in North Abington Center, and I quickly left. Whether I was asked or not, I left and arrived, and we were there the whole night. So that was the Standish block. The Winthrop block next door burnt later on, but that's a different story. And I'm going to quickly wrap up here.
Okay.
Here is Sunray Leaf Farm, Beals Farm, August 21st, 1981. They had just brought in all the hay, stored it up in the hay loft. Albert, as a thank you to the kids that worked, he took them to the Marshfield Fair. When they came back, he said something's not right. They saw fire in the hay loft, burned the whole building down.
Right away.
This was Chief Casey's last fire. He retired actually 2 days later. He had served for chief since 1957. I actually served as MC at his retirement party. Actually, the day before he died, I was a selectman at the time. He called me from the hospital. I wasn't home to take the call. I called back the next morning. I ended up, his daughter told me he had called to say goodbye. But in any event, his wife had asked if I'd do the eulogy at his funeral, which I did.
Nice.
And it was, at that point, Hap was appointed chief in 1981, Hap Howe. Then Bill Millett in 1988. Malcolm Whiting in 1996. Arthur Pelland, and then John Nuttall, and then the current chief, Jack Glenn, who was the 16th chief of the fire department.
Yeah.
So if you could,
This was a major effort to rebuild.
barn raising, yeah.
Yeah.
If you could, yeah.
In fact, Ken Whiting, are you in this picture?
Could be.
Thought so.
If I recall, it went up in 2 days.
It did, yeah, Saturday and Sunday. It did. And the community got together and they had an old-fashioned barn raising.
It did.
Here's the 2012 muster. And some of the guys are standing right up there.
Ah,
now.
there they go.
They're a little older.
Why is it in black and white? You weren't that old.
This is, was for the 300th anniversary of the
Yes.
town at the high school.
That's why it's black and white. It
Yeah,
had to
they-
look old.
And they won a trophy.
Yeah.
And you could-
Maybe the 2026 muster coming up.
Oh, cool.
Here was 287 High Street. This was a fire on March 1st. 287 High Street was one of the oldest. It was, you're going to have to help me with this.
I might not be able to.
Reverend Samuel Brown, who was the first minister of the Congregational Church.
Yes.
He passed away. His widow married
Is that a Niles?
Josiah Pam.
Tory, I think.
Tory.
Yeah, there we go.
Josiah Torrey, who ended up marrying another widow's. He liked widows, apparently. So anyway, this fire, this was their house. The 287 High Street was built by Torrey's father, I believe. He moved in with Dodge's wife when he married her and her
Dodge.
12 slaves.
There you go. Shh, we don't talk about this.
This was the Truffant family. Phil Truffant was born there. That was the Truffant farm. Anyway, that fire was 3 alarms. It's funny when I go back. Worst thing you could do as a firefighter with Chief Casey was show up late to a fire. Because he would say to you, "Did you just get your postcard?" So in this fire, I slept through the whole thing. Never heard a word. My wife never woke me up. And the next morning, she told me about it. I'm like, so I texted Chief Glenn jokingly and said, did everything quiet last night? He said, no, we just had a 3-alarm fire, go back to bed. And all I could think of was Chief Casey's words saying, did I just get my postcard that we had a fire? But if you could,
There was your postcard.
you're moving along.
Okay.
These are the, to the left, and they're all up here.
Our collection.
Here is Chief John L. Casey, Old Jack as we called them, 1914 to 1949. Next to him was his son, Chief John F. Casey, 1957 to 1981. Beyond that is Dr. George Whiting, who was the physician. Dr. Whiting was president of the Historical Society, Mel
Who was?
Whiting's, Chief Whiting's father. Beyond that is a helmet from the South Abington Fire Department. Before it was named Whitman, they had split off. Beyond that is the King Philip. The King Philip with 1869 and a bucket from the King Philip. Beyond that, the white helmet is a chaplain, Reverend George Miller was the Baptist minister.
Remember him?
And then the torrent next to his, I'm not sure on that one. But we're hopeful, we've asked and the trustees have approved of the new station having a display at the new station of some of the artifacts that are here. I wasn't going to let you leave without seeing a picture of my smiling face and all my Easter finery. This is
Easter finery, yeah.
myself at the North Abington Depot Fire with my uncle, Leo Donovan. Bob Christian, I remember Bob, who had Lynch's Pharmacy, would always go around, take pictures. And he looked at both of us and said, smile.
There you go.
Then
Of course.
he ended up giving the
Jeez.
other picture, so you can go on.
Jeez. Okay, well.
There's the current station, and there is the proposed station.
Future.
Now, very quickly, I want to make mention of the Coconut Grove that happened on November 28th, 1942, and its connection to Abington. Coconut Grove was
Nightclub.
a nightclub in what is now the south end of Boston. It was very popular. It was owned originally by a mobster. His lawyer brought it over, Barry Wolanski, in 1933 after the mobster was killed in a gun battle.
Surprise.
The Wolanski used to brag he was very good friends with Mayor Morris Tobin, and he didn't have to comply with the fire
Neither.
codes. So he would hire cheap labor, unlicensed electricians, And his motive was, bottom line, was profit. The club was licensed to hold 500 people. On this particular night, it had 1,000 people. Abington connection, John Ware, who was a letter carrier with my father at the North Abington Post Office, and Don Rocket,
I remember.
Lillian Rocket's husband. John and his wife Helen were in there that night. John ran out of money and left early. He didn't realize till the next morning what his fate would have been. In this particular, and thanks to Pam, we had, and Eileen, we had the tour of the Mount Vernon Cemetery last week, and they had mentioned that there were several people that were at the Coconut Grove that are buried at Mount Vernon, which, you know, they were kind enough to show me the grave. And in that particular was a husband, Whitmarsh. The husband and wife, the mother and father, were from Dorchester. They were there to celebrate their 29th anniversary. They had their daughters there and her husband. They got caught in the fire. The father was able to get his pregnant daughter out to the sidewalk. He collapsed and died on the sidewalk, and the daughter died in the hospital a day later. The Whitmarshes were never found never identified till the next day. They're buried at Mount Vernon, and they left 3 boys. A 6-year-old boy would die, I think 4 or 5 years later, 6 years later. They were relegated by order of the court to an orphanage. So they were relegated there. The last part of that I want to mention is I'm a member of the Boston Sparks, and we operate the Boston Fire Museum at 344 Congress Street in Boston, which is an old firehouse. That firehouse was originally, has another Abington connection, was at the time of 1898, the George Bent bedding factory in Merrimack Street down near what is now the Fleet Center burned. The captain in charge of that house, they responded, Engine 39, horse-drawn, to that location. They got inside, the roof collapsed. It was a 5th floor, they had heavy snow, collapsed accordion style. A lot of firefighters were trapped. 6 of them died, one of which was Captain James Victory. His funeral was held from St. Margaret's. They put him on a train bound for Boston to the Abington Center Railroad Station down the street. Abington Rockland firefighters met the Boston firefighters and his casket and escorted him to St. Patrick's Cemetery, where he is buried today. The Coconut Grove fire, there was a 16-year-old boy and a 17-year-old boy by the name of Norse, and his date, 16-year-old from West Bridgewater. They ended up dying in the fire. Some of those at that fire, because the fireball and the gases, some people just died of smoke inhalation, carbon monoxide. Others were burnt. I've seen pictures of all of them that is not appropriate to show here. But these particular 2 died of carbon monoxide, and the remnants in his pockets, the family called and asked the museum, can we donate it to you? So we've got his glasses, his wallet, his Social Security card, his draft card is on display. We have a permanent display of the Coconut Grove that's there. So that's the connection, the Coconut Grove to Abington. Wolanski, the only one they found, they always thought that the busboy, because there was a light out, the busboy lit a match. They proved that wasn't the case. Chances are it was wiring. The official fire department record said it was, they could not determine a cause. Wolanski ended up getting convicted, go to prison. The mayor almost got indicted over it, went along, become elected governor. Wolanski was sentenced to 12 to 14 years, served 4 years. He had cancer. Morris Tobin, the mayor, was now governor. He pardoned him. Wolanski died like 9 months after being pardoned. The fire codes changed drastically after the Coconut Grove.
Sure.
You cannot have a revolving door anymore. If you do, you have to have exits with crash bars, so if you lean up against the door, you're out in there. They found when the fire department got there, it was too late. The fire, they had responded to a car fire, and somebody yelled out that the Coconut Grove's on fire. They got there, had to break down the exit doors and found bodies on the other side of it. People piled up in the revolving door and couldn't get out. So hence the reason that.
So
That pretty much,
wasn't there a big crowd there because BC and Holy Cross?
BC and Holy Cross were, BC actually was favored to win.
Oh, Holy
They got
Cross.
smoked out, so they canceled the party.
Smoked out, that's bad.
That, I know.
That was bad.
They lost. BC coaches had planned the party for the Coconut Grove. The mayor was going to show up. They were all going to be there. Because BC lost, they canceled the party. And you're right, 100% right. Chief Glenn, Jack Glenn, who's the fire chief now, his grandfather was on the Boston Fire Department, responded to the Coconut Grove. His father, who happened to be in the U.S. Navy, was around the corner drinking at a bar with some of his buddies there on shore leave, went down to help, help try and take people out. He ended up becoming a Boston firefighter, and as well as a result of that. So that's the Abington connection to the Coconut Grove. I think I've covered as much as I feasibly can do. As the time is getting on us.
Have there been any deaths to Abington firefighters over the years? On duty?
On duty, no. They've,
Wow, that's a pretty good record, right?
yeah.
That's a great
so far.
record.
Yeah, that's a great record.
Knock wood.
Yeah.
So that's my story. I did write a book, but I'm in the throes of updating it to include, as I mentioned, some Rockland stuff. I did a better job at editing, where I didn't do the last time. And I want to include it up to and including the 2027 facility. So with that, that's my story, and I've got nothing more to say.
Thank you. Excellent. Before we turn you loose for refreshments out back, provided, by the way, by the Abington Fire Department. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh,
Yes?
if I could, one
Go.
thing. I want to thank Chris Carty, Captain Chris Carty. I went to South Shore VOTEC and electrical. If you asked me to determine if a fire was caused by electrical, I could do that for you. Whenever
PowerPoint, yeah.
Doug said to me, "You need to put a PowerPoint together," I started to shake.
I said I could help.
And I called Chris, and he started talking about air dropping. I looked at him and said, "I have no idea what the hell you're talking about." So thanks to him, we have the PowerPoint demonstration.
And I've got you just back.
But I can wire it though. So in any event, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right by all means. Yes.
In your new book, or your application, are you going to mention anything about the Toll House fire? Because that was pretty big back not too long.
It was, yeah. I was actually there. We were all at a party the night. It was New Year's Eve, and we were at a party, and then responded to the Toll House fire. And that's as much as I'm going to tell you.
Okay, there's a story behind. So no,
Yeah.
it's not going to be in the book. Definitely not. They changed the names to protect the guilty.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you, and thank you to the fire department for the refreshments in the back room. Please hang around. One question I always ask at all of our events is, how many of you are members of the Historical Society of Old Abington? If you look around and see people, look around at people who have their hand raised, look around who don't, and chat them up. Please. Thank you very much. We're back here in November to talk about baseball, and then we're at the church in Whitman to talk about the history. Thank you all. Great audience. Great topic.